And on this one is the detective, because we gotta go back into history in order for us to see the influence of ritual work. How does it build out? How does it come up? But we're gonna use the format that you see in the organization known today as the Illuminati, and how that organization built out its ideas and rituals. When you talk about the first degree, third degree, all the way to 13 degrees within the Illuminati's organization. How did those come about? But we're going to deal with that from what happened within their history thing, but then you're going to decode the meaning of it, particularly for everybody else that's getting involved in all forms of ritual work. This might be quite interesting when you see how it relates to every other field, whether be cultism, whether be buloi, whether be all these things that you see of spiritual fathers arising, and you hear of cultic work that takes part in those things, whether be in Satanism and all these things. This is quite telling. This organization, the Illuminati that we are talking about, was started around the period of the 1776, and it was originally called the Perfecto Ballistician, and that was kind of like the name. It was a very weird one. I don't know exactly how you read that out, but that was the original name. It wasn't the Illuminati in the beginning, but then about 2 years later, in the 1778, that's when they changed the name to the Order of the Illuminati. Okay, and they took on the symbol of the Owl of Minerva, which is to symbolize them taking secret knowledge from the spiritual world, seeing in the dark. Okay, to bringing it back to their agenda. And remember, their agenda was this: 4 areas of influence. Adam Weishaupt, which was the leader of the organization of the Illuminati, was frustrated with clergymen being in society. And remember, by this period, Germany, and particularly Bavaria, was infiltrated with religion, whether it be Catholicism or whatnot, or Protestant teachings and so forth. But one thing was, the Catholic people that were bishops and whatnot, who were all over. And Adam Weishaupt, the guy who was the founder, with his other friends, was a teacher, was a lecturer of some sort in one university. And he wanted people that were educated and whatnot at first, but then they later on changed to people of power or influence. But remember, the agenda tells you why the Owl of Minerva. The Owl of Minerva, with the idea that an owl can see in the dark. So they are seeing in the dark. They are seeing dark things, or they are seeing wisdom from the occult, and they are bringing it to infiltrate, to stop these 4 areas. First of all, religion, or to safeguard from religion infiltrating private life. They didn't want their lives to be told what to do or what to be like. That has become the agenda of either Pan-Africanism and whatnot. In years before, atheists were not bothered by what the religious people were teaching. They were just teaching against it at certain areas. But right now, they have created material that is agitated. They have created their version of apologetics against religion, whether it be Christianity or Islam. They've created their own teachings around these ideas. So first of all, Adam was frustrated with how religion was infiltrating private life. He didn't like that. He wanted to influence that. You'll hear the quotation in a minute. He wanted to influence propagation of superstitious beliefs and teachings. They wanted to influence that. They wanted to have an infiltration into that without overpowering. That statement is going to be very important in a second. Okay? And number 3, the push for knowledge, or the spread of knowledge. They wanted to infiltrate those areas, which means education and whatnot, and people that are in power and legislation and stuff like that. That's why it's no shock to see how many people in legislation are into organizations like the Freemasons we recently spoke about, the lawyer of Peter Obi, and then you would also talk about some of the people who are in high authority in Ghana. What are they? They are Freemasons. And so you can see the Freemasons was made to tackle those particular areas. And point number 4, the control of state power. So they wanted these particular 4 areas. Okay, they didn't want to have to be controlled by these things. They wanted to control these areas without overpowering. So you might not see full-on satanic, remember the Owl of Maneuver? You might not see that in the dark idea, but you will have these places portray their own version over the ideas of power in religion and so forth, and in education and so. Now, the name was Perfecto Ballistica, which means the covenant of the perfectibilities. That was what they were called in the beginning. But 2 years later, in 1778, they changed it to the Order of the Illuminati. Remember that. Now, the fascinating part was when they started to gather people or to get people to join into their organization. They would promise them that they would learn higher forms of ritual practice. Yeah, that was the promise that they were giving people. Because once Adam Weishaupt, the leader, joined the Freemason, he noticed that the 3 degrees that were in Freemason, because remember, he just wanted information about ritual practice so that he can perfect his organization. Now remember, there is 33 degrees in Freemasonry, and then there's 13 extra degrees in Illuminati. So he wanted to build levels above. So they only had 3 levels by the period of the 1780s. And they got joined by one of the guys who was very influential, and Adam Weishaupt wanted him to be the one that recruits, because this guy was an alchemist. He was also a very well-versed ritualist. The man was deep in it. His name was Adolf Freiherr Carnegie. Adolf Freiherr was deep in ritual practice. And Adam wanted such a person because he knew with a person who is exceptionally good in ritual practice, they could build other levels in the organization. So it takes a couple of years with them, with Freiherr busy pushing and recruiting, and people are recruiting, and Freiherr being one of the people that's recruiting, that he starts asking questions. Excuse me, Adam, where are the other degrees that you've been promising people? And Adam had to come out open because he knew Adolf Freiherr was quite important, or Carnegie was quite important to the organization. He told him up straight, they have not been written. The other degrees have not been written. Because he wanted the influence, but when the power and people were joining and people were just coming in, he was seeing all this influence, they kept promising them, you're going to get higher in these degrees, you're going to get higher in thing, because in Freemasonry you are 2, 3, 4 degrees above, and it's not getting anywhere. Because remember, the first 3 degrees, or I forgot what they are called, the blue degrees, I think that's what they are called. The first 3 degrees were teaching them very basic ideas. But then once you get above those degrees, which had to be written, okay, whether it be the 13th degree and so forth, those that had to be written, they relied. If you remember in the episode that we spoke about the Pearl Tuesday, others give themselves in order to establish what these levels are. This is exactly what you see in the spiritual father doctrines. These other people have grown in degrees to a point where for other people to establish themselves in that area of occult work, they need others who've been there. And that's what Carnegie and Adam Weishaupt were advertising to others. Oh, you want to get deeper into ritual work? Yeah, come and join us. That was the enticing idea that they were pushing to these guys. They kept pushing that they had higher degrees, but these guys had to join them in order for them to have these higher degrees. The higher degrees had not even been written out. Note the one thing. They needed, Adam Weishaupt needed people who were very well versed in ritual work in order for them to write those out. When a Sangoma comes into practice thingy, they have their ancestors, so forth. But they get someone who is a Gobela, someone who is versed in the art of these things, who's given themselves to these things to teach them ritual work. The same thing that you see here, they needed others who were very well versed in the art of ritual practice to grow in ranking. That's why when you hear people talking about my ranking in the spirit is very high, you hear this type of teachings from these apostles in Nigeria and whatnot, and it's weird teaching. It's not biblical. Yeah, it's very occultic type of teachings. I've heard all these apostles so from Nigeria, you will hear them teach that it's not biblical. You'll hear it from the NRA, from the New Apostolic Reformation organizations in America. I once heard someone speaking about Duncan Williams and spoke about him within that tone to say, yeah, he's very deep he's very well versed in ranking in the spiritual realm. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've also heard the same thing spoken by, what's his name? Joshua Solomon. I've heard him talk about ranking in the spirit. Yeah, you're ranking in the spirit. It's not Christian, guys. Stop talking like that. Okay, that's very weird teachings. It has no roots in Christianity. It comes from outside. But remember, these guys, this is going to be quite important in the later on episodes. These guys who were establishing themselves in thinking, a lot of them were being taken from the Catholicism route, from the Catholic religion. A lot of them who were Masons were part of some form of religion, whether it be Anglican or thingy, or whatever form of Catholicism was available by that period. And this is going to be very important. Later on, I will show you something, particularly with a lot of Masonic lodges. I'll show you something about most of these lodges, particularly about religion and their want of using religion in order to grow themselves. That's why when you go in there, they will have Muslims, they will have Jews, they will have Christians. And they are there claiming they are worshiping God in their individual. We'll talk about that later on. This is going to be quite interesting and important to note here. People are being taken from whatever belief system or ideas and brought into ritual work with the idea of ranking. So the teachings that people like Kenneth Copeland and all these people that are teaching these teachings about ranking, yeah, now you see where it goes to. It has its origins from these occultic organizations like your Illuminatis and so forth. Why? Because this was the promise that they were giving out. You will rank. You will be higher in the ranking. You will be higher in ritual practice. You will be higher in... And this was the promises that they made. And these promises that they made, they did so with the intention of roping people in. They did so with the hope of reaching people. But remember, how are they getting there? Or what are they doing? Is to slow the influence of religion, to slow the influence of superstition, to slow this influence so that it does not affect private life. So you can't be an evangelist in Freemasonry. That's why belief systems like ZCC are useless. Yeah, because they do not have an evangelism wing. What's the goal of doing that? The goal of doing that is to make religions ineffective Very Illuminatic. Very Illuminatic. That's why I asked that question. Why does the ZCC Church not have evangelism? When did you ever see IPHC evangelizing? When? Never. You don't see them doing that because the goals of these organizations is not that. It's exactly what the Illuminati wanted. They wanted religion to stay to itself. And those are the most popular ones. They stay to themselves. They do not evangelize. They don't come out here and teach people in their private life how life is lived after God, which was the goal of Adam Weishaupt to start with. On the next part, we'll then go further into showing other parts about this. But I wanted this part here to be out so that it can show something. One, the levels and degrees were dependent on others to build them out or to write them out. Number two, not only were they dependent on others to write these other degrees out, it's very important to note that these degrees that were being built out, they were with the perspective of the Owl of Maneuver, which is taking information from that kingdom in order to teach it out in public one, to be acknowledged as the way of life. That's why in the first part you see celebrities are being used to push the idea of satanic clothing, satanic culture. They are making it public. People like your little Uzi Vert and so forth, that guy, out there saying that his followers, they are going to hell with him. Recently. That happened very recently. For those that might think this happened this week. Okay? Yeah, it was, I think, Rolling Out Loud. That's the name of the event where he was when he claimed that he is converting city girls to Satanists. It's to make this public to a point where it's not, remember the quoting word there, control without overpowering. Control religion, control celebrityhood, control celebrity work and all forms of entertainment without overpowering it. It doesn't have to be completely satanic, but it can propagate satanic work, satanic practice, without showing it off too much. Just hint at it and pass.